there's been a lot of ill health through the years. And that's just, for me, it's been like, how do I love my wife? Because you're not going to get your, let's say, sexual needs met as frequently as you would like. And I have to work through that.
Sure.
I have to and guard myself through that. But I've got to love my wife through that. I want them to know that this is possible. That this world that's got so much chaos, it's possible to love your wife well. It's possible to grow old together and possibly senile together. I don't know. It's a good possibility.
Yeah. Hey, what's up? Welcome to That Husband Podcast with me, Black Newborn. Here we are husbands who aren't where we want to be, but certainly are not where we used to be. We are imperfect, always failing forward, trying to know better so that we can do better. That's one thing. Yeah, like you said, I think a lot of us tend to struggle with now. I don't know if it's a time thing or just because of how we find ourselves in a culture, especially with social media. As much as social media has helped us, become closer, make us realize that the world is smaller, but in some way it's actually put us in our silos and made us more individualistic. And there's this notion, especially on social media, that you see it quite regularly, that I'm not going to let my spouse change me. If I'm going to get married to somebody, they better accept me the way I am. I'm not going to, And I always say to women or men who say that, like, don't get married then. Because that's the one institution that's going to force you not to be yourself. You're going to have to die to yourself. You're going to have to think about the next person, I personally haven't done that, maybe to my shame as well, and I think, the more I stay married, the more I'm like, okay, it requires another level of dying to self, especially then when I got a kid.
Yeah. It changes it.
It changes everything.
Now you're a dad as well.
I'm still wrestling with how I'm coming, and it's probably like a very naive way of thinking, but coming back to being a husband, So I'm like, been a husband for 5 years before we had a kid, and then my kid is 5 now. So the next 5 years, I was a husband and a dad, but it just felt like I'm struggling to just be a husband again, which is impossible because I'm a dad now as well. But it felt like my wife kind of became my wife again easier than I've been able to adjust to becoming a husband again. How did that work for you? You had to do it 3 times.
Well, we already, the third time was a little bit different. Yeah. But we were 3 years married when our daughter was born. I was a student. I'd left the workplace, gone to study. We were pretty much living with nothing, and it really is, just the grace of God that brought us through that. But unplanned, not no in action, obviously, but there was.
You were loving each other.
Yeah, we were loving each other. But our daughter was born 3 years into our marriage, and I was 1 year into Bible college, and here we had a child, and that changed a hang of a lot because we made decisions together that impacted our lives even up until today. Around that time, that we felt were important, and I think sometimes it's the hard decisions that but it also kind of was an unselfish, I guess, I hope, decision to do that, and it was one that we made together. That she was going to be at home with our children as long as they were in school, and mostly that we were able to maintain that somehow. and it was a journey. But I think that was a decision we made. It wasn't. No one made that decision. And I think that's part of that oneness that we try to apply.
Sure.
We're not doing these things on our own. We're doing those together. So the transition between being a couple, and she was working, she had to stop that. Quite relieved, I think, over that, and then coming into being a mom, and then 3 years, 2.5 years later, our son was born, and then we had a gap between then of about 15 years, I guess.
Sure.
Between then the next daughter came into the home, not ours, but just she is ours as well.
Yeah.
So. So the family extended. My daughter got a sister. My son got a sister, and life carried on like that. But it was those together decisions that we made all along the way.
Sure, that's great, man. Because we live in a culture that would have very skewed priorities. So I've been very clear and very vocal, especially on this podcast, that marrying somebody who shares the same worldview with you is very important.
Very much so, yeah.
Because that also would say, in our case, like in terms of priorities in our marriage, how does that go? So it would be God first, your spouse next, your children after that. And I know there's people who are just like, forget that. It's probably the other way around, where it's their kids first. Their spouse, if they're happy, and God somewhere, if they have time for him. But I'm like, that's just not going to work. Again, your kids are with you for a certain amount of time. And it's not that even if they move out of the house, they're no longer your kids. They're still your kids. But the thing that even brought these kids into this world is your marriage. That God worked through that, obviously to bring life. But for a lot of people, and I think a lot of young couples get that wrong, because they might have issues in their marriage. And then they have a kid. After having a kid, it's like, okay, I can focus all my attention on this kid who's not going to argue with me, who doesn't bring troubles, who doesn't challenge me, so I'm just going to ignore my spouse. And then they dedicate all their energy to the child, which I think, again, you're crushing the child, because the child is not supposed to be bearing all of that weight. You're supposed to give your spouse that weight. But what would you say to a couple who's gotten themselves entangled in that?
I think you really need a common vision for your marriage.
Yeah,
that is a together vision. So whether it's you're talking about your spiritual lives together, your work relationships, your parenting, or anything like that. And we say, if I was to just think, you spoke about God first, and there's just a thought, this has been swimming around in my head, a lot of thoughts swimming around in my head. But I actually wonder whether we still haven't got that wrong.
Sure.
So God first, absolutely, and that's the pinnacle of everything.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure everything is layered. I actually think a lot more is parallel.
Sure.
So, and I think there's an element that we leave out of it, and we go God first, and then I think we need to put ourselves there. And this sounds selfish, but it's not, because if I'm not well, if I'm not healthy spiritually, if I'm not healthy in my worldview, if I'm not healthy, and I would encourage a wife to be that as well, because then I can't be present in my marriage. I can't be present in my parenting. Sure. I can't be present in my workspace. Not like I should be, and something's going to get out of kilter. So I actually think it's like this pinnacle where God is God first, and myself, and then under that is this layers of like my wife and my kids aren't. They mustn't interfere with and then together we are in our parenting.
Sure.
And then, and then as it goes on, my marriage is under God. My workspace is under God. my church life is under God. Because again, we get that all messed up. You think being involved in like, I'm a guy, I'm in church. No, it's like, doesn't mean you got God first in your life. It just means you're at church.
Sure.
And I don't know. I don't know if this is even making sense, but I kind of see it like that we are so determined to organize everything like an organizational structure thing that it's actually a little bit more simple. And we got God first, and we got ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves so that we can actually love our wives as we should under God.
Sure.
And we can be together, be parents under God, and then bring our lives, do our workspace well, and our relational space, and our church life, and all the community life, and hospitality, because that's where you need a common vision for these things. If you don't have it, you won't achieve it, because you got no goal there.
Sure. I think now I'm probably veering off because of the thought you brought, but this whole, and maybe you could speak into that, just this whole idea of self-love. So if it's God, then me. There's many ideas of self-love in the world, and while you were speaking now, I was thinking about how the scriptures call us to love our neighbors, we love ourselves, and I always ask then the question, how do you love yourself? So if I'm looking after myself mentally, then the command is that the way I look after myself mentally, I should be doing that for my neighbor. If I clothe myself, I need to clothe my neighbor. If I eat, I'm loving myself by feeding myself, then I need to feed my neighbor. If I pray, read the scriptures for myself, then I need to be able to do that for the next person. But that's not the idea of self-love, at least as most of what social media and just world in general. What would your thoughts be on that?
And I think this is where our perspective of God first really matters. Yeah, because it brings in His vision of us, how He sees us as image bearers. As we're never going to understand ourselves until we understand how God sees us, and our relationship with Him being most important. So we've got to preserve that and guard that. I think if we really care about ourselves in any way as we should, it's got to start there. Because I can't lead my wife where I'm not going.
Sure.
So if I'm not on that path,
say that again.
Because if I'm not going in that direction, I can be in church on Sunday, but I'm not walking that road. And I want my wife to go there. How am I going to lead her and help her grow spiritually and flourish as a child and daughter of the Most High God? And I think when we get to see ourselves as God sees us, and so I'm talking about, like, I look at myself and I go, Bruce, you're a son of the Most High God. And this is like a pretty radical statement, because there's a lot of times that there's very little reflection, because the sinful nature that creeps up, but there are a lot of times when actually I've got to believe what God says about me, and I think, and I've got to apply that in my life and live that out. It's more than I think there's this dichotomy in life where the self-love is quite toxic and almost it's a sinful sort of perspective, like I've got to look in the mirror and tell myself I love me. So, please. I don't think it's there. We don't have a problem loving ourselves. We're really good at that. Our problem is loving ourselves as we're meant to, and seeing ourselves as we're meant to see ourselves, and caring for our own spiritual well-being and our physical well-being, and just going on from there. So if I look back at my marriage life, I haven't done exceptionally well with providing an inheritance for, like, if I die today, I really just pray for for grace somehow for my family, because there's nothing, and it's, as I said earlier, it's partly because of decisions we've made, but there is also a deep contentment in that, because there's no hating. My wife and I, we're not hating ourselves. We do wish it was better, but we don't hate ourselves because of the we made these decisions. Oh, what pitiful people we are. No, we're going, those are decisions we made, and we believed were right at the time. So we don't live with regret.
Sure.
Because God, we commit our way to the Lord, and we trust Him for these things. And it's living out our lives. So I'm a son of God. So when I look into the future, my question is, do I have to worry? And then I've got to go back to Matthew and go, oh, do not worry. Father, he looks after the birds. He looks after you. He sees you. He knows you. And that's just mind-blowing.
Yeah. That's great, man. Speaking about looking into the future, your kids have left. You said you're...
Mostly.
Yeah. It's always the sons that are the problem.
That's right.
But how has that been? You know, so my wife was actually reminding me this afternoon that she's only known me as a husband for 5 years, and she'll, know me until Jesus returns or calls one of us home as a husband and a dad. So
wasn't it 10 years?
So we were married for 5 before we had our kids.
Yes.
And then...
So you don't have father then for 5.
I have.
Yeah.
So she's known me as a father and a husband for 5 years. Yeah. And so she's going to know me as a father and a husband for longer than just a husband, which was the first 5 years of our marriage. So even after our daughter leaves the home, so how did you guys now suddenly have to adjust to the fact that there's no kids? I mean, yes, your son came back, but to a very large extent, you've raised your kids, they're out of the home. Because I was saying to her earlier on that, like, by the time our kids leave the house, and by God's grace, I'm your age, I forgot how it is to be 36. So I'm not gonna be a husband who has maybe more time on our hands and same energy, because I don't, and we have more experience and things have happened. So how do you guys?
It's been quite a journey even there, because so our first daughter, she wanted to get out the house as quickly as possible. So when she finished school, she worked out what she could do to go to the US, and spent 2 years in the US at about 18 years old, and came back, and then it was like, okay, what's the next thing? And so she kept on pushing things and going. So she was quite quite an independent young lady, and it was an interesting journey. But we had to deal with that early on. But it was harder. I think it was harder for my wife than for me. I don't know why. I mean, I love my kids. I really do. It's like, yes, they're going. But my wife is like, they're going. Another one. And it started with our daughter. And I think then, phone calls. And Jenny's just such a mum.
Sure.
Like she is like a mum through and through. I guess cool, I don't know if that means I'm a real dad. It's like, oh, whatever. But we love our kids to bits. But Jenny, it was there was some level of adjustment, I think, in facing that. But again, maybe we had been reinforcing something all along. That the kids are not the center of our marriage and our home. They not. I think there's a lot of parents allow the kids to come in between the husband and wife. But that husband and wife relationship goes beyond the lifespan of the children being home. It should. If the child is the center, that's going to break. Surely it is, because you don't have anything left. That you're coexisting. That's all. But when you're coming in and you're going, like, let's make it that the husband and wife we're going to work on our relationship. It's always going to be there. It was even another time. I remember my daughter giving her mum a lip, just saying something, and I took her aside and I said, "You will not speak to my wife like that."
Sure.
I thought, I'm leaving the mom out this one. This is my wife.
Yeah. I don't know why I just got the picture of Jesus in Revelation.
Yeah.
Who comes and it's like,
that's good.
I'm going to protect my bride. Sheesh.
So I think that was for me big. But we've worked on that. I think then the next daughter moved out, and our son had moved out and he moved back just because he's still busy studying.
Yeah.
But he would like to move out. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be another adjustment when he does. But I think Jenny and I have worked our lives that it's not going to be such a big adjustment that our marriage is going to break down at that point.
Sure. That's great. Yeah, praise the Lord for that. Great advice. I was just thinking now. Hey, sorry to interrupt your viewing. We'll shortly get back to that episode. But if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. If you haven't hit the notification bell, please do that so that you're always updated on the episodes that we drop here. We want to change the nation, one husband at a time, one marriage at a time, one family at a time. So if you are inspired, encouraged by all the content that we produce on this podcast, stick around, because next week there's another husband who's going to inspire us to do exactly that.
I came into marriage knowing that marriage is work.
Yeah.
But like happy for it to be work.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like not like a schlep, like the things I love are work.
100.
You know what I mean? So that's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Right. So if I see value in it, then I expect it to be work.
I was just thinking now, with all that you shared so far. I don't know if it's cool for us to, not cool, but just okay with you for us to speak about your wife's MS. When was she diagnosed? And maybe one thing you spoke about, obviously how her spiritual life grew from that, but just like. How was your marriage like at that moment? Like, my wife was diagnosed with clinical depression probably 3 years ago. That rocked us. Just I even feel like, or we both feel as though we're still recovering just from the initial shock. Her having to go to hospital, coming out, and dealing with that. I definitely say it's made us stronger in terms of being together, being committed to each other. I don't. How did that rock you guys?
Yeah, so that was 20 years ago, 2004,
Sure.
April 2004. I remember we were attending a friend's church just for a Sunday off, and this was the week before Easter that year, and I saw her sitting down, and I just couldn't figure out why she was sitting down. And then later she said, no, her legs was just giving away, and it's been fairly regular that it was happening like that. And we were living in Empangeni, KwaZulu-Natal in that time. And it was like not the place to be discovered. It was an unusual climate. It's a northern hemisphere type thing. And nobody really knew much about it there. So it's been a journey in that. But it was one where, I remember her going in for one of the first MRIs, and it was probably well over an hour long. Taking pictures of her brain, they found it, and they took pictures, but she came out amazed that it was so quick, because, and it wasn't quick, but what had happened was, as she's normally claustrophobic, so being in an MRI machine wasn't exactly her sweet spot. But having been a person of the word just flooded her mind, and for that time, I can't remember how long it was, over an hour, scripture just came and over and over again, and it just encouraged her, and she managed to get through that, and she's done many since. I think it involved a lot of adjustment in our lives. When we got married, we made the vows, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer. They've all been lived out. In sickness and in health. And we, all of it has been applied.
Yeah.
And well and not. But I think it involved a lot of adjustments, and a lot of adjustments on me being more sensitive to her needs, her energies, what she can do, what she can't do. She's generally quite well, so it's not the. Thankfully, it wasn't a progressive, degenerative kind of MS. But I mean, it's something. She came out of hospital 2 weeks ago, having had some treatment for it. She's, there's been a lot of ill health through the years. And that's just, for me, it's been like, how do I love my wife? Because you're not going to get your, let's say, sexual needs met as frequently as you would like. And I have to work through that. I have to and guard myself through that. But I've got to love my wife through that. And there's a whole lot of other things as well that will come with that. So I think it's been a journey, and I hope I've loved her well, because she's my wife, and I hope that that I have loved her well. I think that would be my hope there. The kids had to, step up in some ways. They applied themselves in certain ways. They're very sensitive to her. They've been very gracious as well. I'm just, when I look at my kids, they're just amazing. They've loved their mum, even in through that time. And that for me is just thrilling. It's like, because Jen's got no control over that.
Sure.
She's got, God can heal her, obviously. We've asked him to, and he hasn't. It doesn't mean he's bad. He's still good. And that's where faith comes in. We apply what we know in the light, because it's still true in the dark. And we live out our story like that. So for me, it's been a journey of just trying to go, how do I love my wife through this? How do I care for her? Have I always done it well? No. I can be very thoughtless. I can be very distant, because I'm trying to manage my own life and my own emotions and my own everything, and then I'm still trying to do her, manage her at times. I just hope she's always felt loved. That's what I think, my wish as a husband, that she would feel that she's been loved, and she is loved.
Yeah, it's great, man. Sure. No, that's great. We'll keep you guys in prayers for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a journey. It's amazing, and the opportunities that God gives, even in things like that, for her to, when she goes into hospital, she makes friends. She went in, the last time she went in, which was 3 weeks ago, she went in, she came out 2 weeks ago. The lady in the bed next to her said, I know you. We've met you before. So it's like, okay.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, it is.
Sure.
So she uses that, and she lives out her life for Jesus in that place, and that's an opportunity that God gives her that that none of us actually can have. because we're not going to meet people in hospital like she does.
Sure, exactly. Yeah, such a realistic way to see it. Yeah, I told you I was excited for this conversation, and I think excitement was a cheap word. I've been highly blessed just from us chatting. And I think if it wasn't a podcast limited for a certain amount of time, I'd be like, hey, let's call our wives and tell them we'll see them tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's keep chatting.
Oh, man. Such a joy.
But maybe to end it here, hope for the next 33 years, you'll be 89.
Sure, I don't know.
God will.
33 years, is that 89?
Yeah. If my math serves me well,
I'm quite happy to go home to Jesus before then. Eh?
You know what they say? If a husband is thinking about heaven too frequently, then he needs to start worrying about the state of his marriage.
No. Yeah.
What's the hope for you guys for? God wills the next 33.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because I think for me, life and work goes on. Work being ministry, it's been serving Jesus, whatever capacity He puts me into.
Yeah.
There's not a glimmer of we're going to retire and live down by the sea. I don't think that's an option, and I don't think it's a desire of ours. Maybe my wife's. She wouldn't mind it, but I think it's I would love. I've always had a bit of a dream, and I think I've got to still work a lot on my own marriage, and I think that's the thing. After 33 years, you just realize I've still got a lot of work to do myself. But I've always had this dream of I love seeing old couples walk hand in hand. And I want to be that. And I'm not always as kind and gentle and gracious and thoughtful and everything that is, but I'm praying that that's the kind of couple we'll be still. Sure. We'll be the ones who go to the shops together, walking through with she's got a walker and I've got my walking stick, and we're going to be, hey, lovey. We're going to be going through to Checkers, and buying our box of eggs or whatever. But that's what I want.
That's great, man.
Because I think that's the kind of marriage that speaks volumes to next generation, because they need those examples. They need to see mum and dad loving each other. They need to see mum and dad or granny and grandpa loving each other. The generations coming out, we're not living just for our day. My marriage to my wife is not just for our day.
Sure.
My kids need to see I've got a granddaughter, but hopefully the abundant grandchildren, kids. I'm a pastor in church, and every Sunday I'll have kids running up to me and giving me a hug, and I want them to see that. I want them to know that this is possible, that this world that's got so much chaos, it's possible to love your wife well. It's possible to grow old together and possibly senile together. I don't know. It's a good possibility.
Yeah. That's good. I thought I was going to end it here, but again, there's more that comes out. So I remember a couple of years ago, and I think I've shared it here before, but I went to visit a friend of mine in the East Rand, and we went to the spa, and I said to him, like, I know I'm supposed to help you shop, but I just want to stand here and observe the old people, because where I live, unless I go to church, I don't see many old people.
Wow.
And so I just stood there, just looking at the old people and taking them in, because there's just, for me, one, I think seeing old faith and seeing people who've walked with Jesus for long just does something to me. But then as well, generally, seeing people who've lived life and are still living, but I can be hopeful because I trust I trust God. And I'm hopeful as well because I see you guys. And so there's just something profound and very beautiful for me, even in you saying now that you do your marriage not just for yourselves, but for the rest of us who are observing. So thank you for that. I just want to say first and foremost, thanks for that. And maybe not to end it here because I said I was ending it. But
you're a good preacher. Let's take another 15 minutes after we.
The plane is going to land at some point. But what would you say to us, to husbands who are looking at you, and then maybe before you answer that, what are you still learning? In 33 years of being married, what are you still learning? And then lastly, what would you say to us?
Sure. I'm just learning what it means to be a good husband. I think we think we reach it. We get this knowledge. It's the application of wisdom is the application of knowledge. So it's getting to that place where we are able to apply consistently what we know to be true. And I think that's one of the things I'm just learning. I'm really excited about reading this book when it's finished. So because I can learn what others have learned. And I think we've all got our own journeys in this because we're individuals, we're unique people. Our wives are unique people. But it's as we learn that together that we learn to value each other, and maybe that's, if I'm to say anything, it's I'm going to knock the same nail of oneness again and again and again. Sure. That our thinking needs to be, when you get married, you are one. That's it. You everything changes from that point on. You make a job decision. You got to think your wife. You make any life decision, buying a new house, buying a new car, sending your kids to school, whatever you're doing, it's with your wife. Thinking about church with your wife, because you're one. You're not two separate people. I think, think of bank accounts. Yeah, you can have your own bank accounts, but the money in both is yours together. It's not your money, my money. It's our money. Yeah. It's like if we just think like that, you're going to be able to build a marriage it's more like God intends, because that's His intention, is your oneness, and you're going to look more like Jesus. How do you love somebody as you love yourself? How do you love your wife as you love yourself? You think of her as one with you. So I think it's one of the big things, and just find joy in doing it. Laugh together. Hey, do that. If you can't laugh together, find a way to get there.
Sure. And what would you say to us in closing? Husbands.
Yeah. Husbands, man, it's just going back to the scriptures. Love your wife.
Yeah.
Love her. As Christ loved the church.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've got there's a remedy for how that you do that. I think we've got to work that out because of our wives. Who is the one we are to love? And work that out and love her, because she is the most important relationship apart from Jesus in your life.
That's great, man. Yeah. Guys, you heard it from the sage himself. True theologian for real, because the beard says so.
The beard says it all.
Bruce, really appreciate this, man. Thank you so much. And I hope this is not the last time.
Oh man, thank you for giving me the privilege to come and sit here with you.
Yeah, and we want to thank Jenny as well publicly that she borrowed you to us. What's the correct English? Borrow or lend?
No, I don't know. She lent.
Is borrowing?
I'll borrow something from somebody. I lend something to somebody.
So Jenny lent us you. So thank you for that. And yeah, thanks for all the gems and the wisdom that you've given us. And we hope and pray that there's a husband out there who's going to use it. There's a husband out there who's encouraged by it. There's wives who are watching this as well who are encouraged by that, and people in various points in the relationship journey. You know? So some singles as well who watch this thinking, I know there's a girl who constantly reminds me, the day somebody says they're going to marry me, I'm going to give them all your episodes. So go watch all of this.
Oh, there we go.
And then we'll talk. Yeah.
So you're becoming more of the sage.
Yeah. I have to learn from sages themselves before. And then by the time my beard gets somewhere, then I'll gladly wear that title. So thanks, man.
Oh, thank you for the privilege. Thank you.
Appreciate it, brother. That's it from us. Thank you for tuning in on to That Husband podcast with me, Black Newborn. Again, hope this was an encouraging episode. Very fruitful one. There's a lot of value in there, a lot of things we spoke about that I think will impact you, change your relationship, give you things to sit down with your partner and speak about that will shape your marriage and your relationship, I think, for the better. Again, husbands who try to know better, do better. And so that's what we're learning and growing to become here. So please do subscribe if you haven't. Hit the notification bell, and we do that again so that you are notified every single time we drop an episode, which is Wednesday at 11:30. But please hit the notification bell, and if you haven't subscribed, do subscribe. And probably just a note, we've noticed that some of you guys don't realize that we drop two parts of every episode or the same guest. So this is part 1. You're going to get part 2 as well. So just be on the lookout for that. All right. From me, Black Newborn, we'll see you on the next episode. All right. Peace.
Yo, man, I protect this thing.
Yeah.
Don't bring energy that is a potential threat to my marriage, man. I don't mess with that. It's an accurate
description.
Do you know what I mean?
Threat, bro. Yeah?
It is a threat if you think about it.
Sure.
It's because, again, if you definitely know that Solo's a married man, then any weird DMs is actually you stating that you are.
Let's call it for what it is.
Yeah,
you're doing dark work.
Yeah, why are you threatening my marriage? I don't like that energy.
That's evil work, man.